I don't know if I've ever been that broken up about a minor character's death more than I have about the death of Hama. This door warden was in the book for maybe like 4 or 5 paragraphs. And then when you learn about his death in the end of Helm's Deep, I was just so crushed I had to put the book down and take a break. And he doesn't die yelling into the warg's mouth as it comes walking toward him. The wargs aren't even in the book before the Battle of Helm's Deep. Hama dies in battle. This incredible man, who had the joy of his kingdom being restored, is unfortunately the most significant casualty of the Battle of Helm's Deep. And for those who don't know, I am reading Lord of the Rings for the first time in my life, and I'm making some video essays about my first time read through. I kind of think you'd like the channel if you like Lord of the Rings, so make sure you subscribe and also like the video too. But from the moment I met Hama in the book, I loved him. There was a comment on another video too that I made that mentioned how they kind of believed Hama to be a younger man, which is why he still has that like enthusiasm and that like vigor to him. But I still kind of think he's like a middle-aged guy who just hasn't lost his hope yet. But again, he doesn't seem to have children, except in this scene in the movie.
This is a good sword. Halith, son of Hama. There is always hope.
He absolutely dies in Helm's Deep, which is just tragic. But Hama had 2 major scenes in the book that I loved, that I thought showed his true character. The first was when the company was supposed to give up their weapons before seeing Theoden. He was the door warden and needed to check their weapons. So he took Legolas's bow with wonder in his eyes, which I think is more like childhood wonder than fear, I think. That's just kind of my interpretation. Perhaps it's fear, as some of you commented on a prior video about, but I kind of like to think this guy is just an optimist in a pessimistic time. A guy who hasn't lost his childlike sense of wonder. And then he takes Aragorn's sword and then Gimli's axe and then just seems to think his job is the coolest. He also lets Gandalf in with his staff, which just seems like Hama knew what he was doing and why Gandalf was going to come. Then, when Theoden was healed in some way by Gandalf, Theoden summoned Hama to go fetch Éomer, and not like 3 seconds later does Hama come with Éomer. It was such a great scene that, again, showed his enthusiasm. The book has it this way. "How comes this?" said Theoden sternly. He turned toward Éomer, and the men looked in wonder at him, standing now proud and erect. Where was the old man whom they had left crouching in his chair or leaning in his stick? "It is my doing, Lord," said Hama, trembling. "I understood that Éomer was to be set free. Such joy was in my heart that maybe I have erred. Yet since he was free again, and he is a marshal of the Mark, I have brought him his sword as he bade me." I loved that passage. It was so good. But alas, in the beginning of the 8th chapter of The Two Towers, there's a devastating passage that just pops up out of nowhere. It says this: "In the midst of the field before the Hornburg, 2 mounds were raised, and beneath them were laid all the riders of the Mark who fell on defense. Those of the East Dales upon one side, and those of the Westfold upon another. The men of Dunlin were set apart in a mound below the dike. In a grave alone, under the shadow of the Hornburg, lay Hama, captain of the Kingsguard. He fell before the gate." It's a simple sentence, but often the most simple sentences in this book are the most devastating, I'm finding. This one about a character I came to love in a few short sentences is devastating for its brevity. In a writing class that I've taken over the last few years, I've learned to write like a journalist. Now, keep in mind, I don't really write like a journalist in these videos. I kind of just write stream of thought. But journalistic writing cuts all the fat from sentences. I remember in one specific class that a teacher said that if you want to make a scene more dramatic and devastating, make it so the reader thinks you're not dressing up your language. Make it a short, simple sentence, and move to the next point. This sentence with Hama's death is that. It was just so quick, and it came out of nowhere, and was so much more devastating to me than Tolkien sitting back for a few minutes to write a long eulogy to Hama and what he stood for and against. I think a simple sentence like this, where he says it and moves on, follows that journalistic style of writing that can be particularly devastating. Short sentences, without being really dramatic, are often written by those who assume a smart audience. I've talked about this in a previous video, but Tolkien's shining achievement is assuming that we are all smart and don't need our emotions to be directed. Instead of writing something like "all of Rohan mourned over Hama for this day," indicating to us that we also too should mourn for him, And rather than writing the whole poem that may have been sung in honor of the door warden, Tolkien keeps it simple. He writes, "In a grave alone under the shadow of the Hornburg lay Hama, captain of the Kingsguard. He fell before the gate." It almost feels militaristic or economical, like you could read that in a newspaper clipping about a casualty of war. And this is tough too, because he has to be very economical about the words he uses. And if he is to achieve his desired result, he needs to use words purposefully. And the specific words he uses are crushing, alone. The last thing anyone wants is to die or be buried alone. That word is devastating. Shadow is also a devastating word too, for reasons I can't quite even grasp. It's both heroic because he's in the shadow of the Hornburg, but also tough too because it's like he wasn't able to get out of the shadow and into the open field with the rest of the men. But I love this style of writing because it creates space for the reader to feel rather than be told how to feel. It trusts the reader to fill in the emotional gaps. Again, Tolkien, assuming a smart audience, knows that I will be devastated by his death. Because he hasn't created a flat side character, he's created someone with joy and optimism in his heart. And he created someone who has a history and a life. And then with a short sentence about his death, and with no fat in it or drama, I am sitting here writing this essay utterly crushed at his death. I knew he died in the movies, but I was hoping that he would live in the book. Because this feels like the death of a friend. I feel like me and Hama would have gotten along well together. I don't know why, but I just think I would have liked him in real life. And just reading his death here, I can picture it in my head now. The camera rises above the battlefield. Orcs and men are scattered all over the place. Dead bodies are everywhere. And Hama is in the midst of all these bodies, wearing his green cloak, with a smile still on his face. Because you couldn't even take the optimism out of him while he was dead. So here's to Hama. May his spirit find the halls of his father. I'll see you in the next one.